I want to wish you a very happy Labor Day weekend and also welcome you. And as expected, I can see a lot of empty spaces in the pews because people are traveling or going to different places. So feel free to take one pew for yourself and relax. Okay? As we come, the readings this weekend could not point us better to the direction that God wants of us. Number one, we are called to remember what God does for us. Number two, keep in mind what He expects of us. We're called to remember what God has done for us and to remember what He expects of us. If you can do that this weekend, I think the readings shall have accomplished their mission. From the first reading, the children of Israel were just about to enter into the promised land. And so the book of Deuteronomy spells out before them what they were supposed to do. Moses told them, do not forget as you are going into the land that you are going to occupy. Don't forget what the Lord has done. What the Lord did for them was concretized in the law. Now, that might sound very simple, but this is actually what happened. They were given the law. The law was the point of, call it contract or a covenant between them and God. So God has chosen them and set them aside from all other people in the world, not because of anything they did on their part, but because of God's grace to just choose them. And that point of the law distinguished them as a people set aside for God. So Moses is telling them, do not forget everything else the Lord has done, giving them life, giving them food, taking them out of slavery in Egypt and taking them to the promised land. Just name them. They were concretized in the law. God gave them the law and they promised all that the Lord has asked us to do, we will do it. And that locked them into a people of special relationship with God in what is called the covenant. Don't forget, Moses tells them. The same thing could be applicable to all of us Christians. We can't forget what the Lord has done for us. Through the waters of baptism, just as a covenant, God chose me and He chose you, regardless of what we may have done or not have done. And that is more concrete, especially when I witness children's baptism. They basically have no choice. But the Lord chooses them. And I love the way the readings put it last Sunday through the prophet Joshua. You choose who you will follow, I and my household. So through the parent, God chooses children. The same way, without any merit on your part or any merit on my part, God chose us to be a people set aside for Him. And I know today it can be very difficult to be Catholics today. Maybe you've noticed that. Just turn on the television, the media, all that they talk about is the sin of some priests actually to face the truth. Very few of them. That does not justify it. It is wrong. We condemn it. But now, other analysts have looked at the things that have happened in the world and in human families. They say actually in schools and in other organizations, these things are worse. But far be it that it should happen in the church. But even though it happened, and most of them, 40, 50, 70 years ago, they happened. But people are using that to beat us in the head. How dare you think you are better than any other person? Now, we don't say that anyway, but it becomes very difficult to be a Catholic Christian today. And that is why the readings are very important. In the midst of all these things that are happening, do not forget what the Lord has done. This is the only church for 2,000 years or beyond that has actually brought the message of God's salvation to the world. Talk about the good things the church has done. Hospitals, schools, education, helping people, just name them. And so when people say, well, I don't want to be a member of the Catholic Church again because of a sinfulness of a few, what other organization do we have that have no sinners? Maybe somebody should say, I don't want to be a member of my family again. I don't want to be a member of my city or my country again, or the world. Remember what the Lord has done, even though people may beat you on the head and question your being Christian or being Catholic, don't forget what the Lord has done. Number two, don't forget what he expects of us. St. James tells us what the Lord expects of us. We are called to love our neighbors. After we have seen the wondrous work of the Lord in our midst, St. James says we have to be doers of the word, not just hearers of the word. And he talks about that doing of the word for the poor, the orphan, and the widow. And there are some people who will say, well, that one is not poor, maybe they have money. Sometimes there may be people who all they have is their money, so they are still poor. We need to take care of them. And we need to take care of people who may not even have money. There are people who are so unlovable. They have proved themselves to be unlovable. But we must see in them that other child of God, according to St. James. Where the person comes from should do nothing. How he looks like, what he does or she can do nothing in whether I should love that person or not. As God's sons and daughters, we are called to love all of them. That is what God expects of us. And that is why we must avoid narrow sense of self-pride. The Pharisees did that in the gospel. That is why Jesus condemned them. They thought, well, they are just a special set of people. Look at how much we have kept the commandment. They focus on themselves, not on what the Lord has done. Therefore, a narrow sense of nationalism, pride of race, or ancestry should not have place in the Christian community. We love everyone, and we help everyone, regardless of where they come from. St. James says this mindfulness of Christian calling through the corporal and spiritual works of mercy. And I'm going to challenge you, sometime maybe you have not seen, you've seen the big windows in our church, you have not seen the smaller ones. There's some there at the back of the church, some as you go up to the choir loft, and all over here. And then on the hallway here. Take time sometime, read the writings on those windows. Those are the corporal, but also the spiritual works of mercy. That is one of the things in St. Patrick's Church that maybe people have not paid attention to because they seem to be hidden. That is what St. James is talking about today. Corporal works of mercy. We feed those who are hungry. We shelter those who are homeless. We clothe the naked. We visit the sick and the imprisoned, those in the hospitals and those who are homebound. We bury the dead, and we also give alms to the poor. But there is also spiritual works. In case somebody says, well, that man or that woman is already rich, does not need my money or does not need shelter or clothing. We give spiritual works. Instruct the ignorant. Advise those who need advice. Console those whose hearts are broken. Comfort the afflicted. Give forgiveness and bear patience. Or bear wrong patiently. When somebody wrongs you, we bear them patiently. These are things that we are called to be mindful of. We have to put the law of God and the law of neighbor into our daily lives. And St. James also says moral purity. When we examine our lives and we see where we have done wrong, we go to the Lord at the confessional to cleanse our heart. What we do outside must match what is happening within us. The Pharisees had a compartment. They wanted to look good in front of others. Look at all the laws that we have kept. But inwardly, they did not really follow the law of the Lord. Christians must be different. We must allow what we think and what we do to match how we act. The Pharisees had a sense of proud superiority, and they put themselves above everyone else and despised the lowly. Today we are called to remember what the Lord has done for us, but also to be mindful of what He expects of us, to pay attention to the lowly,